nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hey guys, welcome to day 20 in the search for 19-year-old Jay SLATER. And the question is, how much longer is this going to go on for? Is Jay never going to be found? Is he going to be found today or tomorrow? Is it going to be another 3 weeks? Is it going to be another 6 months? Is it going to be years? What's the answer? And so part of what we're going to deal with in this analysis is the most effective way to search for Jay. And we're going to get to that. I first want to just dip into a little bit of the news narrative, starting with this piece from The Independent. I'm just going to open the door for my dog who's scratching at the door. So I'll be back in a second. Not sure why I'm not able to hear what's going on. So anyway, this is a last location point from The Independent. Is that the last location that you guys have understood to be the last location? Because the one that Mark Williams Thomas gave seems to be somewhere else. Do you agree? They're not really congruent. And so I must say that's one area that really annoys me is the media have been covering this for 3 weeks, and yet there doesn't really seem to be clarity on where he was last seen. I don't know if maps are not the strong point of the mainstream media, but it also might be that the media and the police don't really want to give this sort of information out to the public because they don't want people roaming in an area that is not easy. So it might actually be deliberate. Just need to open for my dog just a second. So I've just walked my dog and my dog got extremely filthy and I've just washed him, as you can see, and he's still pretty smelly. You can't believe what the bath looked like. Yes. Yeah. And of course, now he wants to do the Madonna and Child thing, which is going to make me wet. So I actually don't think that's going to happen. Sorry, Timmy. You're going to have to get warm in your own time. Sorry, Timmy. It's a little bit wet. I did try to dry him off, but yeah. The most shivering dog in true crime at this point. I'm sure he'll be okay in a while. Okay. Yeah, so there's a little bit of inconsistency in terms of these last location points. I want to bring up another one that that I saw that I don't know if it's really if it's the same. I'm just going to bring it up in a second. So this one actually came from Mark Williams Thomas. You can see it's a totally different one, right? It's not that's the same location that you've just seen on your screen. If you look at this location, let's just do that. That is a ping, but this is another ping point that is the last one. You can see that's the area that you saw on The Independent, but he actually walked from that point all of this way, and then it seems like he may have possibly cut down there or taken a shortcut down to this path. but it does seem like he's trying to get into that direction. And there's the Airbnb, there's the beauty spot sighting, and then there's the last sighting. All of that seems to be in a line that he's trying to get to that some point in this direction. Perhaps also sort of downward, a point in this direction, but also downward. And so one wonders, when he got to the bottom of this zigzag here, where would he have gone? Would he have gone that way? I doubt it. Would he have gone down? Possibly. Of course, if he went down, he would have gone into this precarious area. So this is definitely an area I think that needs to be searched. Also, this area needs to be searched. And if you think about it, walking over here, was he tempted to go off the road over here? This is already extremely sort of treacherous terrain. The question is, did he then take this zigzag? Did he go left there, straight down, or would he have wanted to go right? And, it does, so someone asked the question, could he not have wanted to double back? Could he not have started going in this direction, realized it was too far, and then decided, okay, there's the Airbnb, let me just go back there, and then he got into trouble? Certainly that could have happened as well. It certainly does complicate the whole thing. Right. Timmy, I'm going to put you down. You must just try and... Okay, so that does seem to be the last location that we have of him, and it's off the road. That's gravel. And then, as you can see, it's not that far from where the topography suddenly angles downward. And so you would imagine that this would be kind of ground zero. This whole slope here would be kind of like ground zero. But also look at the general trajectory that he's on. He's wants to go that way. And, if you take that a little bit further, where is he going if he's going that way? And it seems to be that he's going over here. Let's bring it up. Seems to be that he's going, so there's Muska, and there's there's a hiking trail, quite a popular hiking trail that goes this way. It's possible that he was heading towards this area or even that area. So in other words, the next ravine above this one. So either that one or that one. And as you can see, as soon as he starts going this way, the terrain kind of gets extremely treacherous. And that's unfortunately the direction he was going. He was going away from Muska, right, this way, and then seemed to be going this way. And so he seemed to be going into this sort of terrain. And this is really very difficult terrain to search. And so the question is, how should one search this kind of terrain? What do you think the answer is? Like, how would you suggest searching this kind of terrain? Or would you say we shouldn't be searching the terrain to begin with? Let's have a look at some of your comments. Look on Street View from the last ping. It doesn't look like an obvious route. Yeah, it doesn't. David says, if they find him, I don't think he'll be alive. What evidence are you using to say walk this way and walk that way? Well, I think we might have a court case on evidence. Maybe we don't have any evidence. Okay. I'm not going to have that conversation. I just want to let my mods know, if there are any stroppy folk in chat, just kick them off. You don't need to warn them, just get rid of them, because there are definitely a lot of very stroppy folk that are involved in this. So I don't need to deal with that nonsense. You guys don't either. You don't need to warn them, just get rid of them. If you guys aren't sure what level of rudeness is unacceptable, well, rather just don't be rude or insulting. By the way, we don't use all caps on this channel, and we try not to use lots of exclamation marks, just because we try and have civilized, sensible conversations, like without the hysteria, without the drama. If you feel like you can't do that, then you're welcome to step away. Go to a channel where you can scream and shout and be hysterical. This isn't one of them. Devil Doll, can you just try and turn your all caps off? If you can't get it right. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to kick you off. If you can't get it right, then you're gone. Okay. If you've got some kind of problem that you can't turn all caps off, then I'm afraid you're not going to be here. Tasty Jam Sandwich says, how long would he have to stay missing for you to see the foul play narrative as the highest probability? Well, he could be missing for a year, 2 years, 3 years, still not going to affect it. I really don't think you say because we can't find him equals foul play. I mean, where on earth do you come up with that? How on earth do you come up with that kind of reasoning? Jackie says, I dehydrated once in the UK. I have no idea I was going to pass out. That could simply have happened. He collapsed, but then he would have his phone with him. Well, his phone was flat, so he couldn't use his phone. But I must say, you can very quickly get into a very serious health condition through dehydration. I've been in that situation. You start seeing speckles in front of your eyes. You will very soon pass out. It's not only dehydration, it's also your electrolyte goes out of balance. And of course, taking something like ecstasy is going to accelerate not only dehydration, but things like disorientation, things like that. Okay, let's have a look at some of your comments. Okay. Someone says there's more evidence of foul play than being lost. Okay, what is the evidence of foul play? Let's go through the evidence of foul play. Now, that's quite an interesting comment. There's more evidence of foul play, and so it's very arrogant that you say that there's not. But it seems like you being arrogant because you're saying, I'm right, so you arrogant. So if I say it's foul play, then everyone else is arrogant. So if you disagree with someone, are they arrogant? Ma Ruiz says, to follow his track, I would walk on tracks until nighttime, but I wouldn't do it alone. Okay, so that's one strategy, I guess. Someone spoke about wild animals. I don't know if they're not really the kind of wild animals in Tenerife that are going to pose a threat. They're not really big predators or anything like that. I'm going to deal with a couple more comments, and then I'm going to share what I think is a sensible approach to searching. Let's just have a look at some of your comments. There are snakes, but the snakes have been introduced. Tony says, what is making it so difficult to find him? Well, obviously the terrain. It's very tricky terrain, and it's a kind of terrain where you can't say, public, everyone out there, locals, have at it, because it is treacherous. Gavadana says, I was drunk in rural Scotland and went for a wee walk and got totally lost. Luckily, I had a battery on my phone, called my friends. Okay, so what we're going to do in this live stream, we're going to basically deal with 3 areas. We're going to deal with the best way to search for Jay, basically a 4-pronged strategy. Then we're going to deal with 3 separate cases of Britons who got themselves into trouble. And then we're going to just look at the latest news, like what is happening right now in the news regarding this case, right? Okay, so in terms of the best search strategy, I would put dogs at number one, right? I would say you need to um, use scent dogs, tracking dogs, and I know that they did. But what I'm a little confused about is obviously if someone is on foot in the wilderness, then you just track their scent until you find them. So the part that I don't really understand is okay. So what is the problem? Now I heard someone say this. I don't know how they know, but somebody said that um, the dogs couldn't follow the track anymore because it was getting too sort of dangerous. The dogs couldn't really get up there. Now, if that is the case, I would find some way to help the dogs get where they need to go. If that makes sense. So in other words, don't if the dogs can't continue, don't just stop there and give up. You need to find some way to I don't know, get the dog over that next step and further. If a person can get on there, well, then I'm sure a dog can. If there's a safety issue for the dog, then you have some kind of system where you can nevertheless get the dog to continue safely. Whether it's a kind of harness where you kind of piggyback the dog or whatever. But I'm a little bit astonished that something as elementary as the dog following the scent will follow the scent until as far as you can. So I don't really know whether the scent is still going to be out there. I mean, a cadaver odor is totally different to a scent trail, and I think rain and wind and weather do affect it. But yeah, I don't know whether there's going to be much of a scent trail 3 weeks later. But what I would have said is, don't simply give up where the dogs can't go any further. Try and find a solution to facilitate the dogs going further. Now, whether it's too late to do that now, I don't know. I'm not an expert on scent tracking. I know the cadaver aspect a lot better, and that's not something that's going to go away. So anyway, my first prong strategy would be get the best dogs, the dogs with the best tracking. Some dogs are so good they would probably even be able to track a scent 3 weeks later. Who knows? That would be the first strategy. Then the second strategy would be drones. Now, the problem with drones is they have line of sight limitations. So as soon as if you look at the image on screen, right, let's say you wanted to send a drone around this side of this structure or down that valley. As soon as it's out of sight, you're probably going to have problems with signal. So you actually need to get yourself in a place where you can bring the drone down into the sort of area that you need, not sort of stand on the road. You need to kind of make an effort to facilitate the drone to get where it needs to go. Obviously, all of this basically implies coordination. So, that's probably the most important thing. Is you wouldn't just go there and start looking. You need to know, and this is what was done with Kylie Rodney. Everyone needs to basically fill in a little log or digitally track their search grid or search pattern so that one can actually look where a search occurred. In the Kylie Rodney case, actually what happened was some people went right to where she was, and then that actually caused other people to not go there. And of course, the people who went to right where she was weren't looking very carefully, and so that basically excluded the search for those people. Does that make sense? So there's kind of a flip side to the coordinated strategy. Someone may have looked somewhere but not looked very carefully, and now no one else looks there again. So I think at some point you might need to say, okay, let's start from scratch and let's rule out absolutely this area, that area, that area, right? I would say when the private search comes online, that they have gotten approval. If the is it Scottish Mountain Rescue folks, if they come into the picture, then you really do want to coordinate, make sure that people don't overlap too much. It's not the end of the world if they do, because someone, as I say, may have not searched an area properly, and that now you never go into that area again, and maybe that's where you need to be. I do want to show you guys a image of just of the landscape to give you an idea of how incredibly tricky it is when you're dealing with a landscape that's filled with cacti, sorry. Have a look at this. Now, this is a fairly small rectangle of land, right? And look how the cacti basically are in all sorts of shapes, which is going to interfere with your ability to see something that's lying there. Now, someone lying on the ground, maybe wearing a white shirt, is it really going to stand out in this sort of terrain with all of these kind of idiosyncrasies, right? Can you see there's something on the ground over here? Not actually sure what it is. It looks like a track of some sort. But the point is, everything is just so, to some extent, camouflaged by the fact that these cacti stand out, that they basically create a visual barrier. So in order to see beyond an individual cactus, you actually need to go and walk to it and look on the other side of it. And so especially if you're looking down, if you're looking down from an elevated plane, let's say you're on this road over here. If you're on this road and you're looking down, you're going to be looking against these cactus plates, for the lack of a better word. And there might be something right on the other side of it. You're not going to see it unless you come down and get another vantage point. Does that make sense? And that seems to be what this guy is doing. But this just gives you an idea. And these are fairly small cacti compared to others that we've seen. These are, I don't know, knee high, hip high. There are others that are shoulder height. And that's definitely going to, cactus is not something like grass or something. It's quite a solid structure that you can't necessarily see through. And so it definitely adds to the complexity of it. Let's have a look at, thanks for that, Tanny. So that's the second dimension, is drones, that you need to kind of have good qualified drone pilots, I guess. If you can get drone pilots that are climbers, even better. In other words, get these guys into quite inaccessible areas and then go down these inaccessible faces. What seems to be likely is the most inaccessible area probably is the area that you need to search, because the areas that are accessible presumably have been searched. Having said that, there have been so many cases, Casey Anthony, Kylie Rodney, what is another one? Nora Corrin, where people searched high and low. They went to the ends of the earth only to find that the person they were searching for was less than a mile from kind of where they were last seen, or in Casey Anthony's case, a quarter of a mile from her house and a few meters from the road. In Kylie Rodney's case, mere meters from the last ping, which is absurd. In Nora Corrin's case, 1.6 miles, I think, from her hotel room. So it's really, if you think about it, it's really that kind of adds this weird element that you really need to search extremely systematically in a concentric circle, in a grid search around that last ping point. And then from then on, I think you've got to adopt a different strategy where you start saying, okay, how far could this person have gotten on foot if they were dehydrated? How far is it to the nearest sort of precipice, I guess? And which are the nearest sort of danger areas? And that brings us to the third element, which is climbers. What we probably need in this area are not hikers, but qualified sort of rock climbers, people that can rappel down. So if you think about the dimensions we're dealing with, dogs for the scent dimension, and it's not really just the scent on the ground. We may be dealing with a cadaver at this point as well. So you would probably want cadaver dogs on scene as well. And of course, you want really good cadaver. You want really good dogs, but also dogs that are fairly nimble. So you kind of want to straddle those two aspects. A dog that's got very good training, but it can also deal with this sort of territory. And I don't know whether they're exclusive. I don't know, some of the dogs that I've seen that are tasked with cadaver searches tend to be quite lumbering dogs, bloodhounds, the spaniels in the Madeleine McCann case, Alsatians. They're not really good for this terrain, as far as I'm concerned. You kind of need a bit of a smaller, more nimble, almost Jack Russell type. But how good are they at scent? So I don't know. So there's the scent dimension, there's the drone dimension, which is aerial. Then there's the climbing dimension, that's expert climbers who can actually rappel down, people who can actually, that deal with extreme terrain, that are at home in extreme terrain. And then the fourth dimension, hikers. One thing that I think needs to be done is you need to send out a whole bunch of hikers to just cover the normal footpaths. All the paths that are in the area, just go through all of those paths. And you don't necessarily need to leave the path, but just walk those paths and exclude them. And unfortunately, there are a lot of paths that are sort of unofficial paths. And we know that Jay was making use of them, that he was sort of taking shortcuts. And unfortunately, that is making the whole search a lot more difficult. So that's four kind of dimensions: dogs, drones, climbers, hikers, but all you need them to be at quite a high level of expertise, and then they all need to coordinate with one another. So you probably are going to want to identify target areas and then deal with that on one day, and then go into the next area and the next area, and then also coordinate that with the Spanish authorities. Okay, I'm going to deal with a couple of comments, and then we're going to go on to three examples of Britons that got into trouble in somewhat similar circumstances. And what does that tell us possibly about this case? Let's have a look. So that person says, why didn't they offer to help search? Probably because they're not his friend, and I think the other reason was I think they had to catch a flight. I think they were due to catch a flight that Monday, and in the end, I think they spoke to the police, and then they left maybe Tuesday or something like that. But I think part of the issue was that they were due to check out on the Monday. Isn't that right? So if you have to check out of a hotel, are you going to do that, or are you going to, and maybe you've got a car that you've hired, you've got to bring that back as well, kind of thing. Elsky says, I think Spaniels would be effective. I'm not so sure. I don't know if Spaniels would do so well on this terrain. They're not light dogs. They have quite a they're quite heavy dogs, and also hairy dogs. That's another thing. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Alan says, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. Check the caves. That does make sense. What are the nearest caves to the last ping point? Identify the nearest caves, and obviously locals would know that, and then check them. And that certainly would be quite arduous. To address the question, why can't we see or find Jay If he climbed into a cave, well, then you definitely wouldn't see him. Also, a cave would, by definition, be not on a road, not on a path, and if you went inside, well, you'd be out of visual range. And I think the problem with the search so far is it's a visual search, it's not intuitive to the terrain, and there's a difference between the two. Let the terrain guide you, not what you're seeing. Okay, Amber says Australian cattle dog, maybe even like a border collie might do okay. Maybe, I'm not sure how good they are with scent though. I think it is possible that he is alive. It's not impossible. I just think it's extremely unlikely. So he could have gotten himself really injured and is immobilized, and maybe but you'd imagine if he can drink water and eat, that he could also shout and scream and draw attention to himself. So that does seem extremely unlikely. I certainly said that in the beginning, that I would think if he was lost, the sea would be a kind of general guide to where he needed to go. In other words, if you think of Tenerife, the mountains are kind of inland, and Los Cristianos, where he was staying, was coastal. So it's like, okay, where am I? I don't really know where I am, but I know where I need to be is by the coast. So I'll go to the coast. And that kind of would have made sense in a way. Also, if he was starting to get hot, maybe he felt, well, if I just go downhill's easier, and I'll be able to have a swim in the sea, and I'll be able to cool off and all that kind of thing. Okay, so we're going to go from this to another case. It's this one. My brother went missing like Jay Slater. And we're going to go through this case together, and I'm going to ask you guys a question, and see what you guys, how good your critical thinking is. So I'm going to ask you the question before we even start. Do you think what happened to Stephen Cook was an accident or foul play? Without knowing anything, something happened to Stephen Cook in a foreign country. Do you think it was an accident or foul play? Anyone have any ideas based on not knowing anything? Is anyone aware of this case? Anyone heard of this case? I don't know how anyone can say accident or foul play. You don't know anything. You just know that he went missing. So how can you guess based on nothing? So that's the first thing. Let's try and open our minds and be curious. What did happen here? So we will come back to. So there's someone here who said, "Don't care." If you don't care, you really don't need to be here. I actually think I just. Hmm. Okay. By the way, Carol, sorry about that. I was trying to get rid of Tank, and I accidentally got rid of you. I'll try and bring you back. Mods, if you can try and bring Carol Donaldson back, I'd appreciate it. Anyone else that doesn't care? If you don't care, you really shouldn't be here. I mean, what are you doing if you don't care? Anyone else that doesn't care, just let us know. Anyone else in chat that doesn't care? Let us know. Anyone else here that just doesn't care about what we're dealing with? People have gone missing. I don't really care. Anyone else? I mean, put up your hand. You don't care. Blah blah blah. Let's hear it. Anyone else? Okay. Right. So let's go through this. My brother went missing like Jay Slater. The brother of a man who disappeared in Crete in 2005 has urged missing Jay Slater's family to stick together and ignore the noise. Right. Relatives of Stephen Cook 20 waited 12 years for answers. Right. And so you might say, yeah, they're never going to find Jay Slater. Well, Stephen Cook remained missing for 12 years. He was found 12 years later. I can't really think of many cases in true crime where a body just disappeared and they never found it. There's Jennifer Doulos beyond her. Can't really think of any. So it's actually extremely rare that a body goes missing and is never ever found again, even if there's a criminal aspect to it, even if the criminal is really, 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 really good at what he's doing. It's virtually unheard of that bodies just completely disappear forever. So there's an example. And his body was found at the bottom of a well in Malia on the Greek island. So there we've got a little bit of context. There we've got a bit of context for where a body could be when you're looking and you look for 12 years and you couldn't find it. Well, where was the body? Well, it's in a well. So in this case, you might have a similar situation. The body might be in a cave. So somewhere where most people wouldn't sort of ordinarily come across it, right? And so the question is, how did his body get there? Do you think his body got there through foul play or through an accident? Again, we don't have enough information to even answer that question, right? We don't have enough information, so let's get some more. His older brother, Chris Cook, now 49, said Mr. Slater's disappearance had brought back tough memories. He said the 19-year-old families will have days where they will reach rock bottom. It's actually quite a ironic turn of phrase there. Then he says, Mr. Cook from near Norwich in Cheshire told the BBC coverage of Mr. Slater's case brought back painful and emotional memories. He said, at least we have a conclusion to Steve's story. He is back, he's buried with my dad now, and there's a bit of peace. And then he says, so here's the backstory. Stephen Cook was last seen asking for directions. What's one of the last things Jay Slater did? What is one of the last things Jay Slater? What was one of the last things Jay said to the Airbnb owner? Well, he was asking about the bus. He was basically asking for directions. When's the bus coming? Asking for assistance, but very much like asking for directions. And I think he misunderstood. So whatever she told him, I don't know if he asked her, well, do I need to go that way or that way? Someone said that an Apple iPhone's GPS would have taken you the way that he went. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, you have it. Stephen was asking for directions. That was the last thing. And guess what? Also, he became separated from his friends. Didn't Jay become separated from his friends, and he became separated from the Airbnb people? So as soon as you on your own in a sort of a strange place and you lost, that becomes a bit of a risk factor, wouldn't you say? Now, are there any foul play folk here? How does any of this factor into your thinking when you hear that? Were you thinking, wasn't there a man walking with a knife nearby or something? But it's not mentioned here. So if you want to insist on it being, let's insist on this being foul play. Okay, let's try and find. Oh, so it was during a bar crawl on the first night of his holiday. So maybe he drank something and spilled his drink on someone else. But the point is, he ended up being alone. He was last seen asking for directions after becoming separated. So he's essentially on his own and basically lost. And what does during a bar crawl mean? It means he was very likely inebriated, under the influence, intoxicated. What happens when you're intoxicated and you lost? What happens? You don't know where you are, but you're also drunk. Are you very likely to end up safe and sound in your hotel room? Because that's exactly what happened to Riley Strain. They found high levels of intoxication, I think 3 times above the legal limit. He was literally falling against street signs, stumbling around, trying to look at his phone. And, he was so drunk that he couldn't figure out what was going on his phone. And people insisted that there must be foul play there as well. But actually, he'd gotten extremely intoxicated and he was lost, and it was at night. And so his remains were found in a well by Greek workmen in February 2017 alongside a disposable camera and a belt. And so, how do you think he died? Do you think he died because he was drunk, got lost, and fell into a well? Or do you think someone pushed him into a well and he was attacked and he was murdered? What do you think? And the investigation into this couldn't decide. They said they reached an open conclusion due to lack of evidence. So in terms of this particular case, they couldn't decide either way what had happened. They couldn't decide whether it was foul play, and they couldn't rule out whether it was an accident. And why? Because of lack of evidence, right? Lack of evidence. And so I think you've got to ask yourself, in terms of this case, what are we dealing with? Right? What are we dealing with? The one thing that I think I would like to know in this particular case is, where was his phone? Did he have a phone? It was 2005. I don't know if there's any more information. So it says here, Stephen's disappearance happened before the era of widespread social media. Mr. Cook said he still found himself reading distressing and unpleasant rumors online. And anyway, that's him. And there you can see, this is Stephen Cook, and I think that's pretty much the last photo you see of him. And he's drinking something, and it's a very similar visuals to Jay. The last pictures we see of him, it's at night, and he's drinking with friends, and then he gets separated from his friends, and then something happens. Okay, so that's that case. Now we're going to go on to the next case, and this is the disappearance of Jack O'Sullivan. Right, now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go through this, and we're going to ask the question, is this more likely foul play or an accident? And the whole idea isn't, it's to get yourself exercising with a certain amount of information. Where does it take us? And in the previous example, I think you can acknowledge that you can't say it's foul play. And you also can't say it's an accident. There's just not enough information. But certainly there's you could say someone who's drunk at night, lost, might not know that there are wells to fall down in Greece, right? And so one could say, yeah, that could have happened. But equally, one could say something else happened. So the idea is just to practice that critical thinking muscle, as it were. And once we've done that, come back to the Jay Slater case. So let's deal with this. So it says, the clue that could solve the disappearance of Jack O'Sullivan, by the way, Jack went missing this year, And there's already a clue to what we're dealing with, a missing graduate. The other thing that we want to look at in the previous case was, how old was this guy when he went missing? Well, he was 20 years old. Jay was 19. Is age a factor? I know people said, wow, I can't believe how stupid you are. Obviously, he was 19 years old. It doesn't mean anything. Well, Stephen Cook, 20 years old. Does that mean anything? Does the age of a person who's drinking mean anything in terms of these situations? And I think if you just think about it in terms of your own experience, what is the most risky thing you've ever done, and how old were you? When do people who drive tend to have the most accidents? Why is insurance different for people of a certain age, right? Then over here, how old was this guy? How old was Jack? 23 years old. How old was Riley Strain? I think he was 22 or 23. How old is Kylie Rodney? 16 years old. We're not dealing with anyone who's 30, 40, or whatever. We're dealing with teenagers and someone who's barely not a teenager, university students. So is age a factor? Jack O'Sullivan's desperate mothers begged the public to find find the one item that may reveal why her son has been missing, right? And so he is a law graduate. He vanished after going to a house party on Hotwell Road in Bristol. By the way, I lived in Bristol for about a year, so I know Bristol quite well. So what do these cases have in common? This guy was also in a foreign country, and the last thing he was doing in that foreign country was drinking. The last thing that he did, or what he was doing leading up to his death, he was partying with friends, drinking at night. And he's 20 years old. Same with this guy. House party into the early hours of March 2nd, 23 years old, and he's with other kids that are doing exactly the same thing. But this is the part that certainly makes it quite difficult. Police say Jack's phone remained active for hours after he had last made contact with anyone. Is that a sign of foul play? Is that a sign of foul play, do you think? So if you apply to Jay, what if Jay didn't have 1% but had, let's say, 20% or 50%, and called Lucy or called someone and then just didn't call anyone after that? What could that indicate? And obviously what that could indicate is someone did something to him against his will, and his phone continued to do certain things even though he couldn't, and then eventually his phone stopped, right? Anyway, let's continue through this case. His mother, Catherine O'Sullivan, said it just doesn't make any sense. My appeal really would be if somebody picked up a phone, or for whatever reason, or passed a smashed phone or anything, that would give us an indication of where that phone went. Now, what we tend to see in true crime is when the life of a phone ends, it tends to mean that someone's life has ended. So if somebody stops making phone calls, stops logging into their social media, stops using their bank accounts, all of that is indicative that they are no longer alive. In other words, there seems to be a relationship between when your phone stops reporting and a person's life. It's very unusual that your phone would just come to a dead end and then just not continue after that, right? It's true, hey? Okay, let's lie back a bit. Okay. And so here we have a situation where the phone seems to have a bit of an afterlife, which I must admit I can't really explain. And so that's him. That's Jack O'Sullivan. Let's make it a bit bigger. You can see he's quite a young dude. He's a law graduate, quite fit. He's just run some kind of race, Bath half marathon. And there you have basically the fabric where he got into trouble. Now, I'm going to give you guys a moment just to study that. That's him at number one. He's walking across a bridge over here. And then I'm not sure what the time is here, but that is 2:57 a.m. That's him walking there. So he's walked from there to there, 2:57 a.m. And then he walks from there to this point. That's at 3:08 a.m. So that's taken him about 9 minutes. And then he walks from here to there, and that's another 9 minutes later, and he seems to be about here, 3:17 a.m. And so just looking at this graphic, what conclusions do you draw? So when I saw this, and as I say, I've lived in Bristol, the part that stood out was all of this water and a bridge going over the water and walking along the water and ending up right here, and this is water as well. And you might say, well, you're totally biased because of your coverage of the Riley Strain case. Absolutely. That's exactly what Riley Strain did. He walked late at night in the dark, got lost, was drunk, and fell into the river. It's not a good idea to be lost, unsteady on your feet, intoxicated, not a little intoxicated, but very intoxicated, and near water. By the same token, I would say it's not a very good idea if you are sleep deprived, perhaps high on something, perhaps still somewhat intoxicated, walking on very steep, treacherous terrain. It's just exactly the same thing. And so when I saw this, I thought, you know what, in my opinion, it's quite clear he was under the influence. He got disoriented. When he got to this point, he was surrounded by water on many sides, and he very likely fell into the river. And that's why he's not been found, because he fell into the water. And so that was my assessment when I got to this part of the article. Was like, that's what it looks like to me. And then we read a little bit further. Let's have a look. So this is the information. It's important to know it. On March 2nd, the youngster met friends in Bristol for a normal Saturday night out, traveling by bus at 8:20 p.m. from his village. And then he went to a pub, and at 10:45, he texted his mother that they'd moved on to a house party. So they'd gone from a pub to a house party, and they were safely at a new location. He said, all good, keys are safe. But then another 3 hours passed. He sent a final text saying that he was okay. And then at 3 a.m., Jack left the party alone. Now, what do we have kind of in common here with all three cases? We have all three of these people end up alone. They drunk, they in unfamiliar territory, although I don't know whether that applies to this guy. I don't know. Although I would say if you're drunk enough, it doesn't really matter where you are, you're going to be disoriented. Riley Strain, on his own, late at night, drunk, fell into the river. Kylie Rodney, on her own, late at night, was under the influence, drove into a river. drove into the Prosser Lake. That other guy that we dealt with in Crete, same thing. Stephen Cook had been drinking late at night by himself, unfamiliar territory, and what happened to him. CCTV captured some of his movements through the city, from leaving the house party and passing the Junction Swing Bridge to finally turn down Brunel Lock Road. So can you see there's water over here? There's water over there. There's, I think, a walkway, and I've been in Bristol. There are all sorts of canals all over the place. That's him walking over there. Can you see he's all by himself? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. He's walking by himself. What could go wrong? Do you see anyone else in these pictures? So if you want to, let's say you're sitting here and saying, I want there to be foul play here. Like I just sort of feel like it just can't be something else. Well, do you see anyone else in any of these pictures? Is there anyone else present in any of these pictures? I don't see anyone else. It's 3:10 in the morning. I don't even see a car. I just see one person. There's one person. But let's say you kind of a sadistic kind of person. You say, I don't know, I just feel like I want someone to have hurt him, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's no evidence of that. So it doesn't work, that kind of thing. And so the same applies in these other cases. When you see the person walking by themselves, that's by definition what's taking place. Is there anyone else following them? Because you would see that on the CCTV, and the answer is no. Is there a car that is sort of hovering nearby? No. And who is that girl who got attacked walking across some park, I think? And someone was surveilling, and I think they eventually found that on CCTV. Anyone know who I'm talking about? So yeah, he's walking over here, and there are a couple of vehicles. I think that's a street lamp. None of these vehicles seem to be obviously in motion. This is 3:17, and that's where he's walking over there. So he called a friend who was still at the party at 3:24 a.m. And when the friend returned the call 10 minutes later, Jack answered and just said hello, but nothing else. So that is quite mysterious. There's also kind of a strange text that Riley sent. I think he wrote "good lops" or something like that. And so it also didn't really make any sense. And so he just says hello, but nothing else. Mrs. O'Sullivan said that the friend left the party soon after. She tried and tried to get hold of him, but couldn't. She sent messages to him saying, please let me know where you are. Please let me know you're okay. So, guys, the foul play folk, maybe she should be the suspect here, just like Lucy. So somebody that is concerned about him, let's make that person the prime suspect, right? That's what's happened in the Jay Slater thing. Unbelievable. Anyway, his family have now taken to walking his final route every day and at different times of day, just to experience what it might have been like for Jack and any indication as to what happened. And that's so important. You do need to follow in his footsteps. And also, so what they should try to do is go to the area where Jay was at the time that Jay was there. And what is the light and the wind and the weather? What is that going to prompt you to do? Are you going to feel cold or hot? Are you going to want to walk in the shade or in the sun? Are you going to be able to see the sea? All of those things matter. And then they said, I wanted to see if it was dark, how it felt, but it's incredibly well lit. Officer said that his phone remained active on the Find My Friends app until 6:44 a.m. Since then, his parents have had to hear the heartbreaking news from the police that they are working on a hypothesis that he may have fallen into the river. And that's also my hypothesis. It's the only thing that explains, first of all, how he could go missing and he's still missing, and also how in the fabric that he was in, which is here, something could have happened with no one being around him. Because you can also imagine, if something happened here, let's say someone came here, it would have been picked up by CCTV, a car coming here and a car leaving, and yet it isn't. And so the only thing that really makes sense, as far as I'm concerned, is that he did fall into the river. Now you might say, okay, but that doesn't make any sense. His phone was still working until 6:44. I agree. It doesn't really make any sense. Was his phone, did it fall by the side of the river or something and it later got washed away? I don't know. Was he mugged? I suppose you could say that, but I don't know. But anyway, my hypothesis is the same, that he fell into the river. And I'm not completely satisfied with it because there seem to be a few issues with it. But the alternative, that there's foul play, also doesn't make sense. How did someone get in and out without being picked up on CCTV? Okay, and so those are two cases. And so can you see how in those cases you kind of have a lot of a similar situation to Jay Slater. You've got young person drinking late at night, get separated, and then something happens. And it does seem like it's certainly possible that in all three of these cases, somebody fell. So Stephen Cook fell possibly into the well. Jack O'Sullivan fell into the river, possibly. And Jay Slater may have fallen as well. And of course, you could say, yeah, but no, I think they were pushed. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But then you've also got to say why. Why would someone do that? Okay, so what do you guys think of that? Then there's, of course, the pregnant woman. I dealt with that in a previous video. And the importance of that was to show that the victim is not necessarily always completely innocent, in the sense that, you go and you get drunk or whatever, and then you leave the area. What I would like to know is, what did she get a fine for? I don't think it was ever really mentioned. There's mention that she was drunk and disorderly, but what does it actually mention? Did she break windows? Did she break glasses? Why would you be fined 420 euros? It seems like a fair amount of money. So what, did she bump into someone, or did she literally break something, kind of thing? We got no idea, but the fact is she also left the scene, left the country, and didn't actually account for what had happened. And so one does wonder whether that's a factor here. Did Jay leave where he was, not go to his hotel room because of some issue where he was, right? It's hard to say. It's hard to say whether he was just young and curious and wanting to enjoy himself, and the guys he was talking to said, wow, we're staying in this incredible area, blah, 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 and we can also give you this, and maybe that those were all a factor. It's hard to say. But it could also be something like this. As soon as you have a situation where it's not just drinking, but drugs as well, then you're dealing with, it's not just that someone's in terrain that is going to be risky or dangerous, now it goes to a whole nother level. It's a little bit like, if you think about someone who's walking next to a river and they're very drunk and they're stumbling around. Then you have another person who's walking on like rocky terrain, and here and there are kind of um, drops, and then there are cliffs further on. How is that different to driving while under the influence? You're driving, and then there are tricky areas where you need to go around a roundabout, and you need to yield, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. How's that different? If someone drives drunk and crashes, does someone say, I think it was foul play, I think someone made them turn the wheel? Someone was actually in the car, held a gun to them or a knife to them, and forced them to crash into. Who thinks that way? So anyway, that's that. Now we're going to come into the latest news. And so what is the latest news? Let's have a look. Let's just do another search. Not much news, right? Jay SLATER, chilling new detail in search for missing teen that could change everything. Let's have a look at that. Jay SLATER's friend hits out at drug mule conspiracy theories. Family hits back as TikTok star quits. Twist in case of teen missing on holiday. Jay SLATER friend says, we ain't drug mules on day 20. Jay SLATER, London man who was with missing teenager at Tenerife, says he left here. He was alive when he left here. It's basically what he said. He left the house alive. Now, I must say, I do think that statement basically seems to acknowledge that, well, he's not alive now. When he left here, he was alive, but he's not alive now. Don't you think? Marin, thank you so much. Jay SLATER's pal Lucy Law breaks silence after sharing a moving photo. Okay. Must say, I think it's an extremely bad taste going after Lucy. She cares about her friend. People now are trying to find out ways to accuse her. It's just in such bad taste. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Jay SLATER, chilling new detail in search for missing teen that could change everything. What's the chilling new detail? Is it the one about him being afraid? After having a conversation with an ex-British Army officer, reporter Nick Pisa believes Jay's phone may have been thrown. That's interesting. Pisa said the mobile's GPS location could only be possible if the phone was thrown into the terrain. He told GB News, we're not obviously being kept up to speed, but the former officer did tell me that he thought where the ping came from was rather surprising because it was really steep to get to. And it was covered in undergrowth and cacti. And this seems to be the point. This seems to be the point where that ping came from. Look how thick the grass and bush is over here. Okay, come. So if we go back to that image, I'm not sure whether they're suggesting that the phone was thrown from over here or closer to this point. But that certainly is an interesting idea. of course, the whole phone being thrown thing is I guess, a foul play thing, because no one would throw their own phone, right? Unless you were falling. If you were in a state of falling, you might not throw your phone, but you might lose touch with it, put it that way. So, yeah, it certainly is an interesting thought. I don't know whether I really agree with the thinking here, because I don't know whether you can say that the ping point is absolutely exact to a millimeter, whatever, especially when you have mountainous terrain. I think you can. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know whether you can say the ping point is accurate to 5 meters, 10 meters, 100 meters. I don't know. But I would imagine that mountainous terrain would certainly distort the accuracy. And so I don't know whether you could say that it's absolutely in this little area, the ping point. But he goes on to say, he said to get there, you'd have to need a machete, or he suggested someone had thrown the phone into that growth. PISA revealed that expert climbers are still searching with the backing of Jay's family, despite the civil guards. Oh no, Emma's pulled out of mixed doubles. Despite the civil guards' active search ending. In an interview on July 18, Lucy said he's gone on a night out. He's gone to a friend's house, someone that he has met on holiday. One of the people he has met has hired a car out of here, so he's driven them back to his apartment, and Jay's gone there, not realizing how far away it is. He's ended up in the middle of nowhere. Jay was obviously thinking he would be able to get home from there, but then in the morning he set off walking using his maps on his phone and ended up in the middle of mountains with nothing around. He rang me at about 8 o'clock morning saying his phone was on 1%. He said, I don't know where I am. I need a drink and my phone is about to die. Okay. Then there's this article from news.com Australia. Cops call to probe claims missing teen Jay Slater was involved in a 23,000 Australian dollar Rolex theft.
Jay Slater, who has been missing on the Canary Island of Tenerife since June 17th. But they said the case is still open. There are several lines of investigation, a civil guard spokesperson told Reuters. Slater, aged 19, was on holiday on the island when he went missing. His phone was last traced to the Masca Ravine in a remote national park in the north of the island. He was last heard from when he called a friend to tell her he was thirsty, lost, and had little battery left on his phone, British media reported. Dozens of police officers, rescue teams, and firefighters have been looking since then in the steep valley, using dogs, drones, and a helicopter. On Saturday, experienced volunteers and members of the public joined rescue teams searching the rugged terrain.
Okay. Wayne, welcome. Welcome, Wayne. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So, cops have been urged to probe claims that missing Jay Slater was involved in a. So, if you say that Rolex is ecstasy, then did he steal $12,000, £12,000 worth of ecstasy? And if he did, what role, if any, did his Airbnb pals have in that? Okay, next one. Jay Slater's friends say that we ain't drug mules, as missing 19-year-old's mother issues update on day 20. So Jay Slater's friends have insisted they're not drug mules as the search for the missing 19-year-old nears the end of its third week. And I must say, it's almost impossible to read a story without hearing constantly about conspiracy theories. Like, I want to hear about this story, but before you can get to it, conspiracy theories, fake videos, trolls, etc. Vile trolls, blah, blah, blah. Thinking I'm involved in it all is beyond me, he said. We've been mates for years. Came on our first holiday together, and unfortunately, this has happened. We ain't drug mules or whatever. So people are obviously saying that he's a drug mule. People need to know the facts before whatever. So Debbie Duncan also issued a fresh update. She said on Facebook, Debbie and family would like to thank the local hiking group who have worked tirelessly planning routes and searching for Jay. They are extremely overwhelmed with the kindness of them all. Thank you. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Jay's found today, tomorrow, in the next 2 or 3 days. Although I must say I've been saying that for the past 2 weeks. Basically, just that I think the likelihood of him being found is higher on a weekend because people have got jobs and hikers would tend to be more in the area, I would imagine, on weekends. So again, it's weekend again. I think the odds are increasing that it might be found today or tomorrow. Let's fingers crossed. The teenager disappeared after attending a rave in Playa de las Americas. Does it matter where he was just before he disappeared? Or does it matter where this guy was just before he disappeared? Does it matter where Jake O'Sullivan was just before he disappeared? Of course it does. Of course it matters. Anyway, let's go into the next article. Trying to get the dog into a couple of dogs there, trying to get them into the back. Okay, are there any more news stories that have come out? That doesn't look like it. Okay, so I think that's about it. I've already been on for almost 90 minutes. I think I'm gonna skedaddle. South Africa are playing South Africa are the world champions. We're playing Ireland, who actually ranked number 1. It's the only team we haven't beaten. So we're playing at 5:00. So that's in about an hour from now. So that's what I want to be doing. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Someone says, when was his exit flight for? Good question. I don't know. Another thing that I think is underestimated is, people are saying Jay has left the country and he's somewhere else. Yeah, but all his possessions were still at his hotel room, right? Thanks a lot, James. Good to see you here. Let's have a look at some more comments here. Any questions from you guys? Oh, that's interesting. His flight was on Wednesday. Okay. Now, if his flight was on Wednesday, you can actually imagine him feeling like he wants to make the most of his last few days there. So if you think about, Monday and Tuesday are his last days in Tenerife, he is probably going to make the most of them. He's not going to want to, like when your trip's coming to an end, you really want to end off kind of with a bang. And so he was in a nice area, and I don't know. I don't know if he was sightseeing, but he was certainly I think, a little thrilled by where he was. Thanks, Shalini. Why hasn't Apple gotten involved? Someone says he was taken on a boat. Well, that means he would need to get to the boat. Poco Sue, thank you. Rich Buddy, have you been producing videos? I don't recall seeing you for a while. Okay, well, I've been here. I haven't been live very much, but I certainly have been here. Richard, it takes a lot for Apple and even phone companies. Okay, yeah, Apple, it's not very easy to get them to play ball. I remember in the Oscar Pistorius case. Why did he want to rush home that morning? Well, it was a 3-day rave, right? It wasn't just one day. It was a 3-day, like day and night rave. He'd been up the entire night. It was the end of the third day. And I think he was, it was about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. By then, I think he was hungry and thirsty and probably starting to crash, right? Linda, in UK, he's most probably a bad boy in his area, but naivety got him mixed up with that. Okay. Danny Murphy, anyone know anything about this Johnny Vegas? Maru says, have you read my comments? Which comment? Thanks, Caroline. Kevin, could Joe have thrown his own phone because it ran out of battery? I think it's unlikely. Most of us wouldn't do that. But I suppose if you're really high, you might do something really rash. I suppose it's possible, but I don't think it's very likely. Patricia says, I think he probably fell into a mountain crevasse and couldn't be found until now. I still think the best bet is caves. I think that's the best bet. Also, the impression I get when people think of the accident narrative is that he fell and then he died, like he fell and died instantly. Whereas my impression is he may not have fallen at all, and he may have just crawled into a cave and slowly gotten worse and worse and worse. Another scenario is that he may have fallen or tripped or slipped and gotten a little injured, and then he just wanted to rest. And of course, he was in a situation where he couldn't get back and he would need to be overnight somewhere, and that's why he crawled into a cave, because it is cold at night, it is windy, and so you would want a shelter. And then and then he ends up kind of staying in that kind of shelter. I can't help thinking about Chris McCandless, who was trying to leave where he was, and the river was in spate, so he just turned around, went back the other way, and then ate some poisoned. Well, one theory is that he ate poisoned potato seed, and it wasn't really poisonous; just prevented him from absorbing glucose, and then basically starved. And then he curled up in his sleeping bag and died in a bus, and that's where they found him. So if you're alive, but sort of somewhat immobilized, where are you going to? Where are you going to? What are you going to do? You're going to just sit in the path or sit on a rock. You're probably going to try and find some kind of shelter. Unfortunately, that shelter is going to make you harder to find, right? You could have a situation like that. Yeah, that is Into the Wild. Yeah. Yes, there are. There are many, many, many caves in the area. In fact, they say that because it's volcanic, the gases that come out of these caves that can actually intoxicate you can also you can lose consciousness because there's a lot of CO2. Now I don't know whether there are any caves like that in this area. I don't know if the area he's in is particularly active in terms of volcanically. I would imagine not, but yeah, the Tenerife is like Swiss cheese in terms of caves. I did cover the I think it's called the Playa de Musca Gorge hike, and you can actually see in the fabric of that hike that there like holes in the rock faces all over. There's just a heck of a lot of caves in that area. Okay, we've got some snarky person here. Well, really, if you can't have a sensible conversation, what are you doing here? Mark Vega, he went back with them to sell the watch. They took it off him and... Okay. I don't know, like, I don't really understand this. I don't really understand this. Let me try and get that picture. That's one of them. I'm just trying to get that other picture of him. Does that look like a thug to you? Like, if you were like a gangster, would you want this guy as like your partner? Like, I don't understand it. Have you never watched a movie where they like show a thug, like what a thug looks like? I must say I've never seen a thug that looks like that. That's like got no muscles, he's not got any jewelry on really. That's your idea of like this hardcore gang busting thug. How do you come up with that? Really, I don't know how you come up with that. Kevin says, one thing that makes me question Lucy is she seems to be saying different times that Jay rang. I don't know why you're questioning Lucy. Like, are you saying that Lucy murdered Jay? Is that what you're trying to say? Like, what's the deal? If you're saying, no, there's foul play, did Lucy need drug money and so she put a hit onto Jay? Like, what are you actually saying? Like, Lucy's the only person we really know about in this case, so let's turn her into a suspect. No, let's rather not. Lucy raised the alarm. I don't really get it. Someone said, she went to the house in a suspiciously short time. It took her 2 hours to get there, so it would be 1 hour to figure out something's wrong. I can't get hold of him. He's not calling me back, and then kind of arrange someone to take her there, and then it would take another hour to get there. If the last thing you heard was, I'm thirsty, and we don't know what his tone of voice was. We don't know if he was starting to sound desperate and worried. But wasn't she right? Wasn't she right to be concerned? In the Kylie Rodney case, there was a girl who wasn't really even her friend. It was just someone who felt, well, I'm concerned about her. Wasn't she right? Yes, she was right. In the Riley Strain case, also their friends, I think, reported it to the police. Well, they were right, and he did end up dead. They were right. So do you then make the person who reported it, the person who cared, the prime suspect? I don't really get it. Yeah, it's a lot like that. It's a lot like that. And I don't know if you remember, the YouTubers all jumped all over Sammy, and so I would say, if Lucy's listening, don't give a single interview to any YouTuber, because they will try and lie detect everything you say. They'll try and make you into more of a villain than they've already tried to make you. I would just say, talk to the authorities, talk to the family. Don't do not talk to any YouTubers, otherwise you'll regret it. That's what happened in the Kylie Rodney case. Through the lens, if Lucy did get concerned and called police as well, why are people judging her? Yeah, well, there you have it. Look, if you want to think that he's a thug, go for it. Just, we have different standards, and maybe you feel threatened by the kid you see on the screen. I don't, but if you do, that's your deal. I mean, that's your deal. Okay, well, I think that's about it from me. I don't really want to go much beyond the 90-minute mark. Any other comments here, Shalini? Yeah, I mean, that does seem the way it is. I do understand that people don't like the notion that, can you go into nature and not come back? Can you sort of be in a situation and then you take a wrong turn, and then you don't come back? And that happened. That almost happened to me. I did a sea swim in the Cape. I was also I was about 19 years old, 18, 19 years old, and I almost didn't come back. I swam out. It was the second time I did it. The first year I did it with a wetsuit, and they said, well, then you're disqualified. You're not supposed to do it with a wetsuit. Second time I did it, and I just made some stupid mistakes. I didn't have breakfast. I didn't have a swimming cap. I got about just a mile out and a mile back. I did the mile out, but about halfway back, I was just too cold, and I could easily have died during that. And what was that fault? But did someone want to kill me because I'd stolen the sunscreen? People make mistakes all the time, and it's insulting that a sophisticated person can be extinguished by something as simple as waves, wind, cold, rocks. But we can. It happens on Everest all the time. Marianne von Trapp, have a nice afternoon. Enjoy the football. Watch rugby, hey? Rugby. Yeah, no, if it's nature in a different country, you don't know, you don't have that local knowledge. Look, I was driving through America a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't slept very much, and I was just driving, and it's a little bit different. We drive on a different side of the road, and I'm driving, and I was just following the car in front of me, and something happened that's not really in my everyday field of experience, which is crossing, like a railway crossing. In South Africa, we do have railway crossings, but 99% aren't active. And we certainly don't have things coming down. But yeah, you certainly don't have rail crossings in cities or towns. And so I was in Florida, and I followed this car, and I saw this light flashing, and I didn't really register what was going on. And this thing was, I think, about to come down. And I just followed the car in front of me. And this one guy was standing there, looked at me like, what are you doing? And then I realized, wow, that was a railway crossing, and I should have stopped. And the reason I didn't was it didn't register that was an active rail crossing, and that was what I was supposed to do. And obviously, having luckily not gotten into trouble there, the next time that happened, I would know what to do. But you could easily, I guess, not be lucky in a situation like that. I'm just saying, in a different country, there are all sorts of things that you don't know to expect. Lee Stanier took days to find that doctor. Yeah, that's a good point. Dr. Mosley, right? Gaz says 100% take down a valid area where the phone last ping. The best evidence is that phones last ping, right? That's definitely the best evidence. The best clue, basically, over there. I mean, you probably would want to start with this sort of area, and then looks like he was going in that direction. So maybe, another possibility. I hate to say it, but if someone wanted to throw you off track, then maybe that ping is taking you somewhere not where he was. I don't know. Are there any other images that I want to share with you? Let's just have a look quickly. Yeah, so I originally thought that the ping was here, and maybe he realized, well, I'm just going to go back to Muscat, and so maybe instead of going all of this way back, maybe he would have wanted to walk this way. Then, by the time he got here, he got some water and realized, well, it's just too much effort to get to Muscat. I'll just go, and maybe he went along the river there. But I think Lucy asked him, or Lucy said to him, look, if you're lost, just go back the way you came, go back to Muscat. But he already didn't know where it was. And so this then doesn't really work anymore. Somehow he got disoriented and really didn't know where he was. And that's why I think he headed towards the sea. How close did he get to the sea? That's the real question. Okay, well, I think that's it from me. Our thoughts are with Jay's family and friends. Can you believe it? We had day 20. It's hard to imagine that it's going to go beyond the 3-week mark. I mean, 1 week seemed a long time, then 2 weeks, and then suddenly the Spanish police quit. I don't know, maybe private searches, I don't want to say the best money can buy, but professionals working in an integrated way, who knows, maybe that is going to be the difference. A lot of British folk have been saying, get the top people from Britain in. Well, now's your chance. Let's see what they can do, right? Anyway, our thoughts are with the family, and let's hope that the searching today or tomorrow, there might actually be some progress with the search. And either way, I think even if you search and you don't find anything, you can say, well, we've checked that area, we've excluded that area. Another thing that could happen, I hate to say this, but if Jay's not found and the months go by, you could have a situation where there's a lot of rain that falls. You could have a situation where winter comes and then the vegetation becomes less thick. You could even have a fire that goes through the landscape that may expose someone over there. I don't know if you guys know, I wrote 3 books on the Lacey Peterson case. Lady Peterson washed ashore in San Francisco Bay as a result of spring thunderstorms in the area. So something like a change in the climate, like a change of season, could be what's needed to change the maybe the vegetation is obscuring Jay wherever he is. Who knows? I wouldn't think so myself, but who knows? Anyway, Poco Sue says prayers for Jay and his family. Chelsea, thanks a lot for being here. I think it's been fairly okay in chat. Those who are new here, welcome. Those who have been behaving themselves, thank you very much. Carol says, okay. From the B&B, it is high enough to see the terrain and the roads. When you get down into the bushes with no focal point, everything can change. Did you know that the point where he went after the Airbnb was actually higher, much higher than the Airbnb? So he'd been walking up. And so presumably from the perspective where he was at, he could see the sea quite clearly. And it does make one wonder, wasn't that going to be his next destination? Does make one wonder. Thanks a lot, Danny. Okay, I think that's all from my side, guys. Take care. Hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.